This time it's serious. I need to rethink some things. Psilocybe cubensis, 4 dried grams. I think it's fair to say that the majority of us have listened to Terence McKenna. We all probably remember him saying in his slow, meticulous voice, "It will happen, and it will happen to you." This was a bold claim, and I needed to find out. This is profound. This is immense. I can't describe this or even begin to. I actually met her. She's real, and she was just here with me. She's beautiful beyond my own comprehension. She showed me things that my mind alone could never dream up. She is beauty, and she loves me. I never thought I'd actually meet an all-knowing galactic entity behind a sketchy black market drug deal, hidden in a fungus. She was so cunning and absolutely loving of me, and my willingness to learn was recognized. She saw this and filled me up to the brim. Let me explain what led up to this jabbering. I've tripped on acid no less than 10 times within the past 2 years. I've gone from being someone who believed against God to someone interested in the effects of psychedelics, to someone experiencing psychedelics, to someone experiencing psychedelics, to someone who had the nirvana or satori experience, and now after this, I've truly had a mystical experience. I was thrust headfirst into the spirit realm, and I met different entities. This was my second time ever trying shrooms, and the first time was 2.5 fresh grams during the daytime before I had any real intention with these substances and before any practice in meditation. This 2.5 gram trip was categorized in my mind as bizarre and trivial. Furthermore, I felt that I had pushed acid to the psychologically attainable limits. In other words, my trips were just the same old lessons about my own nature and got a bit more dark and confusing as I tried to squeeze out every last bit of wisdom I could gain from the god of Lucy. I had heard of the dialogue possible I had heard of the dialogue possible with psilocybin, so I bought the unspoken measured heroic dose, 5 dried grams. I had a hunch 5 grams in silent darkness on my bed might be just a hair too intense for my first real mushroom trip, so I cut the dose by 1 gram. I have the utmost respect for these substances and use them in an exclusively ceremonial and ritualistic way. I speak my intention before most of my serious trips, and this time I said aloud to the mushroom, "I am yours. Teach me all you're willing to. I am yours, and I will surrender." I then weighed out 4 grams, ate the mushrooms, and could immediately feel it slowly seep into me. By the 30-minute mark I laid down, turned off all the lights except my computer monitors, and waited. As it was coming on, there was this familiar sense of magic. There was this tinkling music in the background of my mind. The visuals began to grow and become more and more beautiful. I've experienced this heightened sense of awareness and early visuals many times. But then suddenly, around the hour mark, I was confronted by the beautiful spirit. She made a grand entrance and displayed to me so much unimaginable color and beauty, and she spoke to my mind. "Well, you finally found me." The beginning of the real trip was just meeting the spirit of the mushroom for the first time. She knew everything about me and could predict my thoughts before I even thought them. I remember putting my hands over my face in disbelief as I stared at the back of my eyelids, as I had never talked to a plant before. And it was undeniable that this plant was communicating with me in its own language. The mushroom doesn't speak, obviously, as it has no mouth, but it can communicate through the mind, and it's sentient. And given the current situation of us here on Earth, how hard is it to really believe that a plant can be intelligent, just different from our perception, and would want to form a relationship with some intelligent few individuals for us to say what it can't? It showed me so much absolute beauty, and then showed me horror. After we met, it immediately confronted me with terrifying tentacles and alien worms the size of buildings. It showed me war on other planets, and it told me what I was looking at as it showed it to me. At first this was surprising, and I started to feel fear build, but it was coming on, and I knew I had no control of what I was about to see, so I completely surrendered. And this seemed like a test, because as soon as I gave in to these horrors, the mushroom stopped showing me these things. It seemed proud of me. It really saw that I was a warrior and willing to accept the horrors to see the truths. Then after the introduction came the lessons, and the mushroom has a deep comedy ingrained in the way it teaches. You never get the answer right away. I felt so humbled by its absolute ancient intelligence. I remember after gawking in awe saying out loud, "Oh my God, you're real. Oh my God, you're actually here." For long enough, I gained the composure to ask, "What are you?" And after this question, the lessons began. It taught me in a way I knew I would understand. It never quite spoke English, but I knew exactly what it was saying. It said that all life is the same thing. All across our universe, the seed of life is planted, with no purpose other than to make the universe more and more colorful, and complex, and novel, and pointless. Then I asked, "What am I?" And as soon as I inquired this to the mushroom, I heard my neighbors clap and scream, and it startled me. The answer to my question didn't come immediately. The mushroom said, "You hear that? Do you know what just happened?" "They're watching sports," I said as I heard them scream out my window. And the mushroom said, "Yes, they leap with joy watching a screen with men carrying a ball. Quite pointless, isn't it?" I agreed with the mushroom. Then it said, almost condescendingly, "You are the leaping monkey." It told me that all of humankind is simply the story of the leaping monkey, and it was persistent about this idea of leaping. Your fellow monkeys leap with joy at a TV screen, and soon you and your fellow monkeys must leap off this planet. Then it proceeded to show me, among other things, very vividly, the prehistoric fauna of Earth. It showed me dinosaurs in unmistakable clarity. The lizards didn't leap in time, it said, but the monkeys will. This was so humbling because it seemed that the mushroom thought humans were being silly, leaping for the wrong reasons in the midst of urgent chaos on Earth. All this happened to me while lying down, watching the ceiling as I came up. Then I asked it about light, looking at a small light shining brightly from my computer. From doing acid, I've come to the conclusion on my own that light is really the basis of our reality. And the properties of light are profound: wave and particle, refraction, rainbows when shown through prisms, etc., because light comes from a higher dimension and spills into our lower dimension somehow. The mushroom said, "All things are light and energy. I am a being of light, and I place the light into your universe. Then the energy comes from you and all life." I said, "Are there more light beings?" I didn't get an answer to this one. If I did, I couldn't recognize it. And this concept of light and energy didn't make any sense to me at all, until I looked at my desk. I realized that the only reason I could even see the desk at all was because the light bounces off of its energy, and I, a life form, made that desk, thus placed its energy into reality. These lessons about myself and my world were so well taught by the mushroom. I can't explain the way it taught them to me, but it knew exactly how to display things to me in a way I would understand. As this thought occurred to me, before I could even finish thinking it, the mushroom said, "Well, I've been teaching leaping monkeys for quite some time. You guys sure love a good puzzle." I then asked it how I should live my life, play the game well, and connect with all living things. Tell them about me. And this answer captured all my problems, and I was completely satisfied with this in the moment, though I later find that obviously this is much easier said than done. What happened next is impossible as I type it, and insane as I recall it. I don't expect anyone to believe me as I don't believe myself. I think I've gone insane. The mushroom told me that I'm capable of everything I need to be capable of. I've practiced surrender and conquered my internal demons through my acid trips and my daily mindfulness and my meditation, and can see clearly through the institutions of infantilism. I've known this about myself for long enough, and I've been living just fine, so it decided enough with the spiritual bullshit about finding yourself and becoming a better person. It knew I was perfect for its lessons, and it told me that. Then it said I was ready for a one-way trip into the impossible. It took me by the hand and carried me out into fucking nonsense. On a grand scale, the universe is for fun and for novelty and for play and for jokes. And the mushroom told me this straight up. I've come to the conclusion time and time again that my life is somewhat of a joke, and I keep living it just for the fuck of it. It's a good laugh at the end of the day, and it's quite enjoyable. I've closed my eyes high on acid enough times to encounter the cosmic comedy of my existence. But this time, at the peak, I closed my eyes and was greeted with immense colors and movement, and what I came to slowly realize were beings. This space is real, and it's inhabited. I saw the hands of gods holding up Earth-like planets and spinning them in between their fingers like toys. Unmistakable. Great beings made completely of color and of movement, and of pure novelty and rhythm. There was no scale to these things. They could have been the size of a grain of sand or the size of the sun for all I know. I also saw machinery from other solar systems. I saw what looked like technology much more advanced than humans. The mushroom took me to planets where the life there had it all figured out. After years of war like us, the aliens really do eventually figure it out, believe it or not. The Martian buildings, and everything for that matter, were constructed by highly advanced technology simply for the sake of novelty and comedy in its highest form. The structures I saw were somehow meticulously and seriously pointless, and hilarious because of it. The mushroom didn't seem like it was teaching me anymore. It was simply showing me what's out there among the stars. I saw machines the size of a planet, revolving around larger planets, with lights of every color coming off of their beautifully polished surfaces. Remember, the things I saw cannot be brought into words. The laws of physics didn't apply, and everything looked like I was a child in a new world. I've been trying to make sense of, and build a map of, the spirit world. And the more I focused on bringing these unimaginable beings and technologies into my cognitive awareness, as I stepped back, tried to capture the bigger picture, or as I zoomed out, if you will, I realized that there was a tunnel in my presence, like a membrane or a doorway available to open and move into. All around me was the option to go even deeper. The only catch was that I had to first surrender all my trust. I had to first give up any and every last bit of me that thought I had even a clue what was happening. I realized that seeing all these finished and completed alien civilizations was simply a lure into discovering the membrane separating me and the planets and space and time from what's really going on. Way behind the scenes, the real Pearl. I trusted completely that I was insane. I trusted that it was finally over, and that this time I really did it. I was dead, and I was completely crazy, and that this is all impossible, and I won't ever be able to tell this to anyone, and blah, blah, blah. But more importantly, I had to trust that somehow this little dried-up fungus was unimaginably more intelligent than I ever will be. Only after realizing that all of this is true was I allowed into the door. Convinced that I was dead, I had nothing left in my willpower but curiosity. I decided that my brain was really broken and I was completely bonkers, so I had nothing left to do except move through the doorway into the tunnel. So I slipped on through it. I had already twisted my neural wires up enough, so I thought I might as well stop trying to untangle them and just see what this was all about. Deeper and deeper into the tunnel I traveled, leaving behind anything material or even remotely from this universe. And on the walls of this tunnel was beauty larger than the human mind is capable of holding, let alone articulating. I could only watch and wonder as I traveled. Then, without warning and without any sense of transition away from the tunnel behind the doorway, I found that I was inside a large dome. There was no up, down, left or right in this space, and I had no body or memory of my human self. This dome was made of perfection. The dome was every color that doesn't exist, and incomprehensibly beautiful and complex. The walls were made of thoughts, and intent, and hope, and love, and hate. The tunnel I was in earlier was like a chute leading into this dome, like a slide that connects the universe we are in with this room in the center of all existence. And as I looked around, I realized the beautiful repetition of lights and shapes on the wall were all different tunnels or windows into other universes. The words bouncing around in my head. Perfection exists. I couldn't believe it. It was terrifying to behold such absolute perfect truth. I found perfection. After being so constantly discouraged by life and by every day of my difficult existence, I finally found absolute perfection. And then suddenly I realized I wasn't alone in this large dome of perfectly symmetrical repeating shapes. And this realization came so suddenly, because I was staring in complete awe at the grand walls of the dome of constant connection and movement and perfection, when I realized that the wall itself was alive. Keep in mind that the loving and beautiful guide of the mushroom was gone. The feminine, the feminine spirit had left the space, and I was left to fend for myself, surrounded by impossible beauty. Before I could even begin to imagine how bizarre this all was, out of the wall came these wise, constantly reforming, self-transforming machines. I cannot even begin to explain them. It's like explaining yellow to someone who's never seen color. They looked shiny, and they never stayed the same, colored like opal, constantly changing form, and even the number of how many there were. And these machines, made of pure understanding and information in its most refined form, began dancing for me. They knew I was there with them. They knew that against all odds, a monkey had tried and finally found his way into their realm of perfection and beautifully intricate, glistening art. It was so clear that they were expecting me, and they had this immense dance prepared for me. They were so proud that I found my way there. They almost screamed with joy as they danced in beautiful synchronization with each other. I could hear their excited welcome. I was just absolutely mind blown. I couldn't believe even 1 second of it all. Any rational or sense of being human any rationale or sense of being human melted off, and I was simple awareness. They were flying past each other, and through each other, and flying right up to me, simply showing off their ability to amaze. And they wanted to show me something. I only realized this as I gave myself over even more to the experience. I knew for sure that I had killed myself with this drug. It stopped altogether making sense in my logic. Nothing I had read or heard could have ever prepared me for this. So I had no other option than to just entertain their message. I had no choice but to listen to them after it all stopped making any sense at all. And that's when I realized they were showing me something. They were saying, "Relax. Stop freaking out. Please relax. Look at this." Undeniably, they would come right up in front of me, and they would hold out items made of glistening white magic. Let me try to explain this to you. These machines, these opal, translucent, circular, transforming beings came up to me and presented me with, I guess you'd call them objects. And they were, I don't know what they were made of, but they never stayed the same, and they were growing, but God, I can't explain this. Anyways, undeniably, they would come right up in front of me, and they would hold out items made of glistening white magic. These things were made of something that simply doesn't exist here on Earth. They were beautiful, these objects, and the happy little machines were telling me, "You can do this. You can create these. You must create these." And I looked harder at these objects. They were every color we know of, and even more that we don't. They were shining and polished beyond the ability of any man on Earth, but they never remained the same, growing and changing, perfectly symmetrical, inspiring toys. I knew immediately that these things were what all of human history has been aiming towards creating. I knew that if I could bring one of these objects out of the spirit world, or the elf's nest, then history would be changed forever, because these things were simply fucking impossible. And the whole time, these little elves were saying, "Do this. Look at this and do it for the love of God, monkey, do it." Then I opened my eyes. I stood up and felt like a giant. The mushroom was back and said, "We usually enjoy spending our time closer to the ground." And as fast as she came, she left me, the leaping monkey, alone in my room at 2 in the morning with a story that I will never be able to tell.